Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars lore video. Today we will be looking at 5 of the strangest Star Destroyers in Star Wars history. Now just a couple of rules. First of all, I've limited so we only have one real super weapon Star Destroyer on the list, or else they would really dominate. And I've also tried to pick Star Destroyers that represent a diversity of design rather than just sort of being all the same ship. With that being said, let's get started. And at number 1, and these aren't in any real order, we have the Maelstrom class battlecruiser, and I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to include this on the list, but it does seem to be sort of Star Destroyer-like, and it was built by Kuat Drive Yard, so for me it fits the bill. Now, if you don't know what the Maelstrom is, you're not alone. The Maelstrom is a creation of Fantasy Flight Games, and it's described as a battlecruiser slash command ship used by the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. My guess is that the Maelstrom is one of those Kuat vessels, which was originally used as sort of a showpiece for the shipyards, but was then geared up and put into service during the Clone Wars. Now, I've done a full video on the Maelstrom, and I'm putting an image up on the screen, which is my best guess at what the ship would have looked like. I sort of imagine it like a much larger Venator. It's described as having double bridges like the Venator, and the way I've laid out the hull is also based on a description from the source book. This ship is very random because we don't hear about the Republic using very many super large vessels. We have, of course, the Mandator line, which again is just really mentioned in secondary sources. So the Maelstrom is just a really rare one that doesn't get much attention. All right, next up we have a spot occupied by 2 ships, and that's the Victory 2 and the Imperial 2 class frigate. I'm including these because these ships, especially the Victory 2, are just bizarre. You may recognize the Victory 2 from Star Wars Battlefront 2. It's one of the ships present in the space battles mode. Now, arguably this may not be a Star Destroyer, but for me it fits the general design principles of a Star Destroyer close enough, especially alongside the Imperial 2 class frigate, that I thought it was worth including. And I did so because these ships are just weird. I mean, first of all, they're obviously taking the name of much more famous vessels in the Imperial Navy, the Victory Star Destroyer and the Imperial Star Destroyer, but they're just sort of like rip-off versions of them that don't serve any real function. Like the Victory class frigate, for example, could easily be replaced by various other Imperial ships, including other Star Destroyer type. I'm guessing that at one point, Battlefront 2 wanted to have a Victory class Star Destroyer, but maybe the scaling wouldn't work, or they couldn't get the asset to look good in the game, so they just went with this. The Imperial 2 is a little less weird, but like the Victory, it's got this very flat profile, which just isn't something you frequently see with Imperial vessels. All right, at number 3, we have, I guess, another class of ships, and I'm talking about the Marvel Comics Star Destroyer. For those who don't know, in the 70s and 80s, there was a Marvel line of comics. They followed the Star Wars original trilogy, but between movies, they also created several stories, and in those, we got some interesting ship designs. The comics would often, for example, take the general idea of, say, a Corellian Corvette and just change it slightly to give you a bunch of different ship variants. Well, the Marvel Comics also did that with the Star Destroyer. The Rebels would be chased by, or they would frequently fight, many different variants, which would take the general idea of a Star Destroyer design and somewhat change it. I actually really like the design of most of these ships, but it's not very common in Star Wars to have a vessel without a designation, to have sort of a one-off capital ship, so very weird in terms of a Star Destroyer. Alright, so up next we have the Republic class Star Destroyer, and but for this ship's name, it would definitely not be getting an inclusion on this list. So take a look at the Republic class. It doesn't look like a Star Destroyer. It doesn't really look like anything. Now, this partially is because the image we're looking at here comes from Kraken's threat dossier, which is infamously known for its really strange illustrations, which is a shame because it is a source for a lot of lore from Bantam era Star Wars series, like the Black Fleet Crisis, the Corellian trilogy, and more. So here's what the lore actually says about the Republic class. The threat dossier says that it was the follow-up design to the classic Victory Star Destroyer. Although it's smaller than the Imperial class, it actually has 20% more firepower than the Imperial 1, but can be produced at half the price. Additionally, the Republic class comes with a full ground regiment as well as advanced starfighters. So the weird thing about the Republic class is it sort of falls into that category of what really is this ship? And we get that a ton for various New Republic and Galactic Alliance vessels throughout Star Wars legend. So there's the Republic, there's also the Nebula Star Destroyer, which is sometimes called the Defender Star Destroyer, but there's also a Defender Assault Carrier. Both the MC-90 and the MC-80B are sometimes called Republic Star Destroyers as well. There's a Rejuvenator class Star Destroyer, another Picket Star Destroyer, so yeah, there's a lot going on. A lot of it is just mentioned either in a single book or one series. I just think the Republic is the strangest because it does have this weird design, which actually would appear later on in the Star Wars Invasion comics alongside some other Kraken's Threat dossier designs. And it's weird because it was almost categorized as several other ships. But anyway, the final very strange Star Destroyer, in my opinion, is the Conqueror class. And this is the Super Laser Star Destroyer that I felt like I had to include on this list. Arguably the most famous one because the design is just so weird. The Conqueror is basically an Imperial class Star Destroyer with the middle section hollowed out and replaced by a Super Laser. I actually really like the design of all of the negative space, the sort of two-pronged style for the ISD. I think it would have been cool if instead of putting a Super Laser there, they made an ISD carrier variant. I'd love to see some art of that, by the way, if there's any talented artists watching this video. Maybe do something cool enough and I'll cover it in its own upload. But anyway, the weirdest thing about the Conqueror and some of the other Super Laser Star Destroyers is that it just makes no sense from an in-universe perspective. If the Empire can produce planet-killing weapons at this scale, like, what's the point of making literally anything else? And that's also the problem I had with the Zeiston, of course, other than the design was also lazy, but I think the Zeiston is a bit more believable. We see the ship in action. It sort of burrows its way to the center of the planet, I guess. It's stupid, but not quite this stupid, at least in my opinion. The Conqueror, however, isn't really a big deal because really it was just a bit of lore created for the Star Wars trading card game, which in my mind is basically the perfect place to put silly stuff like this. There's also various Sith Star Destroyers which had super lasers like this. There was the Silencer weapon, which was basically a fleet killer that was used on the Doombringer, and there are other examples too. I don't want to go too far into it because that's really it. Those are my 5 choices for some of the strangest and weirdest Star Destroyers in Star Wars history. Before I leave though, because this video was a little bit shorter, a very quick hashtag AskEck. This one didn't actually have the tag, but I saw it in my recent comments. It's from Guido, who asks, hey, I was wondering what your thoughts are on Halo Infinite. The game's coming out soon. There hasn't been much Halo content recently. So I actually really enjoy Halo Infinite. The technical test, the latest one especially, really assuaged a few of my fears. I do think the game is still in somewhat of a rough state when it comes to performance and UI and some other kind of smaller details, but I will say the bones of the game, the actual gameplay itself, is really great. I didn't like Halo 4, either the single player or the multiplayer. I didn't like Halo 5. Halo Infinite really feels more like a modernized version of Halo 3, and that's partially because Sprint is not made very relevant. The map design is a little more arena-like and a little better than it has been in the past, and most importantly, things like loadouts and Promethean Vision and whatever else are gone, where they've been replaced by equipment, and equipment generally is not like a one-hit kill in this game. It's really fun to use. I look forward to picking up equipment every time because I know I can do things like double jump with the repulsor, do some interesting things with the grappling hook. I do think it needs a bit more work, the grappling hook specifically. It's a bit too good against vehicles. But yeah, the multiplayer is really great. I think we just need more. We need more weapons. We need to see more maps. Obviously, that will come in the full game. There are a couple of things I'm worried about. Some of the physics have been toned down. That removes a bit of Halo fun. They really need to add player collision back in because without it, the game just feels cheap, but that's my opinion. I also want to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the chat. Personally, I don't have a whole lot of hope for campaign. I think it'll be fun. I think the story will kind of be malarkey. I'll talk about that more once I've actually played it. Until next time though, guys, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.